It was a humid July night in 1847 when the cries echoed through the plantation house of Colonel Hiram Wexler. One cry from the mother, one from the child, and one from the midwife who would never speak again. Candles flickered against the blood-stained linens. 2 infants had been born, twin boys, but when the midwife lifted them to the trembling light, the room fell into a deathly silence. One was pale, the other dark. Both bore the same sharp nose and strong jawline as their mother, Celeste. But where one child carried the colonel's icy blue eyes, the other carried the eyes of Samuel, the enslaved man who worked the fields behind the house. By morning, the colonel's men had sealed the room, the midwife had vanished, and a new story was written. One child was stillborn. The rest of the South Carolina parish would never hear of the other. But something about that night, about the air itself, had changed. The crows gathered early. The dogs howled at nothing. And from that night on, the plantation's mirrors began to crack on their own. The Wexler plantation sat on the edge of the Edisto River, surrounded by swamp and fog, the earth rich with secrets and blood. It was known for its cotton, white as bone, and for the colonel's discipline, hard as iron. But inside the house, the walls whispered differently. Celeste Wexler had not left her bed since the birth. The servants claimed they saw her talking to empty corners, humming lullabies to shadows that shifted behind her. The colonel ordered the nursery sealed. Only one cradle remained inside. He told the world his surviving son, Thomas, was a blessing of God. Yet late at night, from behind the locked door, a second cry could be heard, softer, more broken, as if echoing through the walls. The slaves refused to go near it. Even Samuel, who once worked the fields by the east fence, begged to be sold off the property. The house knows, he told another man before he disappeared. It knows who belongs and who don't. In 1849, a painter from Charleston was hired to create a family portrait. He arrived expecting one child, but Celeste insisted on painting 2. The colonel objected violently, slamming his glass against the wall, but when the painter lifted his eyes to Celeste's pleading face, he saw something that silenced him. 2 small sets of footprints in the dust beneath her chair. He painted as she wished, though the second child's face was unfinished, its features blurred as though the brush resisted. Weeks later, the painter was found dead in his boarding house, his eyes wide open and his fingertips stained with black pigment. When the portrait arrived at the plantation, the colonel demanded it be hung in the attic. Yet at night, its eyes seemed to move. Visitors swore they saw 2 figures in the cradle. When the hurricane came that fall, the only room untouched by rain or rot was the attic, and the portrait looked cleaner than ever. A new nursemaid was brought to care for Thomas. She was young, God-fearing, and desperate for work. But within days, she began to complain of strange occurrences. Toys rearranged themselves, doors that opened onto solid walls, and soft laughter echoing from the sealed nursery. She told the colonel she had seen a dark-skinned boy playing by the window, though no such child existed on the plantation. The colonel struck her across the face and forbade her from speaking such blasphemy again. That night, she packed her things to leave, but as she crossed the hall, she saw 2 shadows glide across the floor, one holding the other's hand. By morning, her body was found at the bottom of the well. Her hands were clutching her own throat, and her tongue was missing. The colonel told the priest she had taken her own life. But when the priest sprinkled holy water on the well, the surface bubbled black, and the stench of rot filled the courtyard. Celeste could no longer bear the silence. In the presence of her maid, she whispered the truth, how she had gone to Samuel's quarters one night during the storms, how loneliness had blurred the lines between master and slave, how, for one moment, she had felt free. He did not force me, she wept. It was I who called his name. The maid, trembling, tried to comfort her. But as Celeste spoke, the candles went out, and a voice not her own whispered from behind her, "I remember." When the maid ran to light a match, Celeste's hair had turned white. The colonel's wife, once the most beautiful woman in the county, was never seen again outside her chamber. Her meals went untouched. The servants said she prayed for forgiveness until her tongue bled. Colonel Wexler was a man of order, a veteran of the Seminole Wars, a believer in legacy. When he learned the truth, his rage turned biblical. He ordered the fields burned where Samuel had once worked and had every remaining slave branded with his mark. a desperate act of control against what he could not understand. He told his men, "No seed of mine will share breath with a beast." But when he entered the nursery that night, intending to end the secret child himself, he froze. In the cradle lay both boys, one pale, one dark, smiling, cooing, and holding each other's hands. For the first time in his life, Colonel Wexler felt fear. He stepped back, muttering, "Only one of you is mine." The next morning, the cradle was empty. The colonel buried one small coffin behind the house. The town attended the funeral of Thomas Wexler. No one questioned the weight of the casket, nor the way Celeste's hands trembled. But when she tried to speak during the service, a wind rose from nowhere, and the sky turned the color of iron. The priest's Bible fell open to Exodus 21 verse 16. "He that stealeth a man, and selleth him, shall surely be put to death." That night, a servant saw the colonel digging behind the stable, burying something else. He was whispering to the ground, over and over, "Stay buried." But when dawn came, the soil was disturbed, and the shovel lay snapped in two. From that morning on, the colonel aged twice as fast. His hair turned gray, his hands shook, and the laughter of two unseen children began to echo through the halls every night at the same hour. By 1851, the Wexler estate had become a subject of hushed gossip in Charleston society. Guests claimed to hear two sets of footsteps running above them. A priest who performed mass in the parlor returned to town trembling, saying he had seen the face of a child who should not exist. The local children sang a rhyme. Two boys born of one mother's shame. One took light, one took flame. When the moon turns red, they'll play again, till the house forgets their name. Farmers stopped selling to the colonel. He began importing food from Savannah, living more like a prisoner than a patriarch. The servants kept to the outer quarters, and Celeste, still unseen, was said to speak now in two voices. A year later, a letter arrived at the Charleston Gazette from an anonymous friend of the Wexler family. It described unnatural twins born of sin, one white, one black, and the horrors that followed their concealment. The editor dismissed it as madness and burned it. But the following week, he was found dead in his office, his face pressed into a page of his own newspaper, the words "The Wexler Children Live" written across it in ink and blood. His assistant swore the editor had been alone all night. Yet the ink was fresh when they found him. In 1853, whispers spread that a runaway slave had been caught near the riverbanks, claiming to be the rightful son of Wexler. The colonel had him executed on sight. But the overseer who pulled the trigger told others that the man was too young, no more than 6 or 7 years old, and that when he fell, another child appeared behind him, identical in every way but paler. Both vanished before hitting the water. The overseer fled the property that night, screaming that the twins walked together now. From 1854 onward, the plantation's decay became visible. Curtains moved when no wind blew. Doors opened into dark spaces that led nowhere. Workers heard lullabies sung from the empty nursery, always in harmony. Two voices, one light, one dark. The colonel ordered the house exorcised, but the priest who came refused to enter the upper floor. "It's not the devil that lives here," he whispered. "It's guilt made flesh." Celeste was found dead 3 days later, slumped in her rocking chair, her hands folded around a child's toy, a small carved horse, split down the middle, one side pale wood, the other ebony. After Celeste's death, the colonel spoke to no one. He drank himself into silence and kept his rifle nearby. The mirrors were all covered. He couldn't stand to see his own face. "One of them had my eyes," he muttered to a guest once. "The other had hers, but neither had peace." By the end of 1855, the plantation's workers had fled, crops rotted, and the house was surrounded by marsh water. Still, neighbors said they saw candlelight at night, two small flames moving together through the halls. In December 1856, the Wexler house caught fire. Witnesses claimed to see two figures standing in the upper windows, children, holding hands, smiling. The colonel ran inside screaming their names. When the flames died, nothing was left but the stone foundation. His body was found beside the staircase, clutching two small skulls that were not burned. The local minister declared it an act of divine punishment. But the night after the funeral, the minister's house caught fire too. The land lay barren for decades. No one rebuilt. Travelers who passed the old site said they heard laughter under the cypress trees, saw toys floating in the flooded basement. In 1903, a new family attempted to settle there, unaware of the story. Within 6 months, they fled, claiming their twin daughters had started speaking in voices that were not their own. In 1932, a historian named Dr. Eliza Grant unearthed the Wexler records while researching antebellum plantations. Her notes describe finding 2 identical baptism entries, both dated the same day, both signed by the same priest, but one name was crossed out violently. She spent 3 years searching for the erased child's identity, until one night she wrote in her journal, "I think I found him, but he's not in the ground." She vanished the following week. A 1935 expedition to the site took a photograph of the ruins. When developed, 2 small figures appeared in the doorway. Their faces were clear, one white, one dark, both smiling. The photographer destroyed the negative, but not before saying, they looked happy, like they'd finally been seen. By 1941, locals reported strange phenomena near the old Wexler grounds. Twins born in nearby towns, one always dying before its 2nd birthday. Churches whispered that the Wexler sin had returned. Pastors warned expectant mothers to stay away from the river. But one midwife claimed she heard the children singing again beneath the floorboards of her cabin. In 1947, exactly 100 years after the twins' birth, a diary was found in the remains of the Wexler well. The final entry, written in Celeste's hand, read, "They were never meant to be separate. I tried to bury one, but the earth gave him back. The colonel thought he could cleanse blood with fire, but the children were innocent. It was love the world called sin." In 1950, a historical society attempted to restore the property. On the first night, 2 workers disappeared. The next morning, their clothes were found laid neatly on the porch, 2 sets, one covered in ash, the other in red clay. No one ever returned to finish the work. Today, the Wexler plantation is gone, swallowed by swamp and time. Yet every few years, hikers report hearing laughter near the riverbank, 2 voices calling each other's names. Historians dismiss it as myth, but the locals know better. They say the twins were never cursed, they were bound. Born of a forbidden love that defied the world's cruel order. And as the old rhyme goes, when 2 are 1 and 1 is 2, the sins of fathers come for you. In light or dark, they'll always play, till blood and truth both wash away.